Hello, everybody, and welcome to Heartlight Vedic Astrology. Today, I was going to talk about the lunar eclipse or chandra grahan that's coming up in a few days, September 7th, 2025. This talk is from a Vedic astrology or Jyotish perspective, so ancient Indian astrology that's more than 5,000 years old. And it seems like the theme for this moment in time is shifting authority. So let's take a look here. Just a note beforehand, the information presented is for educational purposes only. It should not be considered medical, financial, professional, or life advice of any kind. If you are in need, please contact an appropriate professional for support. Then you might take a minute or two to read the rest of this disclaimer. Some announcements and orientation, especially for those of you who are new. So I guess the big announcement is I am offering a level 1 Vedic astrology course this January, coming up 2026. If you're interested and want an application, those will be available, Monday, September 29th. Or if you'd like to be put on an email list for future offerings, you can email heartlightastro@yahoo.com. Okay, and I have a little video on that if you want to watch that to learn more first. Also, I have a bunch of videos related to eclipses that you might be interested in. So, symbolism of Rahu and Ketu, the north and south nodes of the moon, symbolism of sun or surya, symbolism of moon or chandra, because either the planets, when they align, are what cause eclipses. And then I have a lunar solar eclipse video, auspicious timing of eclipses, and then mantras for Rahu and Ketu and eclipses. So, all different ways to kind of work with this energy because it's kind of tricky. All right, so all of my teaching videos are on my concept playlist. They can be found there. Wherever you see a double asterisk in one of my talks, that means there's a teaching video on that subject if you'd like to learn more. My channel is all about playlists so that different videos on different topics are easy to find. So like this type of, basically it's a moon phase video is in my Go Chart Transits playlist, but there are others like bhavas, houses, yogas, planetary combinations, and others. Also, if you'd like to learn, I am going to be reviewing some famous charts actually in this video. And if you like to learn astrology that way, I have a whole video titled Birth Chart Archive List 2025, where I list all the videos of famous people, places, and moments in time that I've analyzed on the channel. In the video, you can find them in. So the last few videos I've posted, in case you missed any, Aquarius constellation or Kumbha rashi, national birth chart of India, colors in Vedic astrology, and then planetary transits or Gochar for the whole month of September. And then if you're new to all this and want to learn more Vedic astrology or get more out of talks like this, the last few videos I've listed on the bottom of the slide are where we'd start to get a really solid foundation to get you up and running. Okay. Okay, so let's look at the eclipse path first to see where the occlusion of the moon, since we're dealing with the lunar eclipse here, the occlusion of the moon is the strongest, meaning like up to 100%, okay? So the parts in this map that are darker are going to have a full lunar eclipse. And you can see we're looking at basically Central Asia, India, China, the western part of Australia, the whole Indian Ocean, all the, islands there, eastern part of Africa and Europe, and a big chunk of Antarctica as well. And then out from there, there's less and less occlusion of the moon. Okay. So I listed most of these are Central Asia, India, China, Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, Africa, also the Middle East. That's important for our talk today. And yeah, so because we always want to know where the eclipse path is, so because to know where you're going to be feeling the effects of this eclipse more than others. Okay, so let's just take a first pass look at the chart for the lunar eclipse or chandragrahan that's coming up on September 7th, 2025. So this chart is set for Eastern Daylight Time or New York time, and the exact time 14:07 p.m. Okay, so I wanted to give people a chance to take a look at it before I start marking it up. Sometimes there's so many different marks and notes and stuff it's hard to see the chart, but just to give you a chance. Okay, so again, if you're learning or if you're used to looking at charts, you kind of want to let your eyes or mind kind of I don't know, look at it softly, I would say. And then where's your eye kind of gaining attention? Okay, where's your attention going? So, most likely, I'm guessing for many people, they would be drawn to this combination of K2, Sun, and Mercury in the 10th house. Okay, so just circle that for you. Okay, so let me step back a little bit. So this is a Scorpio rising chart or a Vrishika lugna. Okay, so how do we know that? Well, we've got this is a North Indian style chart, and the top diamond in the middle with AS, and the top AS stands for ascendant. Okay, so this is the top diamond in the middle is the ascendant, rising sign, first house, all different names for the same thing. The little 8 in the bottom corner refers to not the 8th house, but the 8th constellation of the zodiac, which is Scorpio or Vrishika in Sanskrit. So we have a Scorpio rising or Vrishika lugna chart here. Okay. To get to the other houses, you count up and to the left, so counterclockwise, so that upside down triangle with the little 9 in the upper left corner, that's the second house. Okay, so you count inclusively from the lugna, the rising sign ascendant, and you count all the way around to the 12 through the 12 houses. Okay. So in the 10th house here, you have K2, Sun, and Mercury. Okay, so this probably is drawing your eye, and probably for good reason. So in Vedic astrology, we would call this combination of K2, Sun, Mercury, these three planets in a positive house, pravraja yoga. So yoga is a planetary combination. Pravraja means like basically gives a life focus. So they're strong, like in this chart of this time, there's a strong focus on uh, 9 to 5 daily activities because that's what the 10th house represents. It also represents reputation. Okay. So, yeah, so that gives the other thing is that within this combination of K2, Sun, and Mercury, this is all happening. This 10th house is all in the 5th constellation or Leo constellation, Simha Rashi. Okay. And Sun owns Leo. So Sun is very strong being in its own house. We would call that Swa. Okay, so Sun is Swa here. The other thing that's interesting at this moment in time is that all three of these planets, K2, Sun, and Mercury, are in what we call a nakshatra of Purva Phalguni. So that may sound like a lot. So a nakshatra, you can translate that as a lunar mansion. There are about 27 of them. Every night the moon passes through a different one, and they all have different energies associated with them. So after 27 nights, you get a lunar month. Okay, 27 nights of passing through these different nakshatras, you get a lunar month. And so the energy of Purva Phalguni, the symbol of it is usually a marital bed or a hammock. Okay, so associated with that is relaxation, enjoyment, um, the finer things of life, being a bit relaxed, enjoying oneself, right? So all three of these are in that energy. Okay. And each of these planets, like the sun, since it's the strongest, and we would say probably dominates these the K2 and Mercury here. Sun represents the president, the king, the father, um, higher authority, especially because it's in Leo, because Leo represents like a stage or a high level position. Okay. And the 10th house can represent like 9 to 5 work or 9 to 5 activity. Okay. So there's some sort of authoritative situation going on here, authoritative move on a high level going on here. Now, Mercury is it's a dual planet. It also represents the logical, analytical mind. Okay, so analysis and that sort of thing. So we've got that going on. So this could potentially be like a leader of some kind, a high-level leader that's quite logical, analytical. But on the other hand, we have K2 here. Okay, so K2 is almost the direct contrasting opposite of Mercury. Mercury is usually very detail-oriented, logical, taking things step by step, analyzing, planning, that sort of thing, making plans and projecting. K2 is the south node of the moon, and K2 is like a very erratic, hidden, unexpected type of energy. Okay. Um, And again, what we have lined up here, we have the sun and the moon lined up with Rahu and Ketu. That's what's creating the eclipse, because you can see moon is in the same degree, almost it's a minute off, but basically the same degree as sun here on this Rahu Ketu axis. So Rahu's the north node of the moon. Okay. But we have Mercury mixed in here as well, because Mercury's conjoined with sun and Ketu. So, yeah, we have Moon on the other side, and Moon is another mind planet, but it's more the emotional mind, intuitive mind. So, because we have both mind planets on the Rahu Ketu axis, this can also signal like mental health type issues, like obsessive behavior, compulsive, uh, impulsive, compulsive behavior, that sort of thing. So, this might be a leader if we're looking at this, sun figure here, sun planet here. This might be a leader or position, high level position, where somebody is potentially toggling back and forth between a very logical, analytical approach to a very like unconventional, shoot from the hip kind of energy. Okay. Depending on maybe the day or depending on what planet you're running, which we'll talk about. So just know it looks so this thing is so we're seeing a leader who's very strong, powerful at a high level, but has some, duality to them. And the thing is, again, these three planets are all in Purva Phalguni nakshatra. Purva Phalguni is a star of that is Venus. Okay, so Venus is in the ninth house, and the ninth house represents government, authority, father. Okay, so again, we're picking up this like, you know, strong, authoritative leader type energy going. Okay. So Venus is a planet representing creativity as well. Okay. So, and generally represents things like diplomacy, social grace, finer things. So we're getting kind of the same energy. Okay. The only thing though is that Venus is in a nakshatra called a Shlesha, which is symbolized by a snake. Okay. And snakes can do different things, right? I mean, they can bite, they can hiss, they can hide under a rock, they can slither away, they can, kind of rear their head and kind of, kind of bob back and forth, that sort of thing. So with Venus and Ashlesha, it looks like here, Venus, again, is like bringing attention because snakes are usually mesmerizing and attention grabbing, right? So this can be like bringing attention to diplomacy or bringing attention to relationship matters because Venus also represents relationships. And Venus is the lord of the second house of partnerships and spouse-like partnerships. Okay. So there's some attention being brought here to partnerships. Also, Venus is the lord of the 12th house of losses, expenditures, but also international trade. Okay, so this could be like a leader of some kind bringing attention to losses of relationships and that sort of thing. Okay, and potentially trying to be diplomatic about it. Okay. Yeah, so again, that's just a first pass, okay? But I'm going to get into more detail, but just as sort of a first round, look at what's going on here. So again, we're picking up a lot of leadership energy, a duality of leadership, bringing attention to leadership, and looks like partnerships and diplomacy, okay? So on the next slide, I put in some more. Now you're going to get barraged with arrows and stuff. So here we go. Okay. So, okay. Okay, so we talked about the pravraja, or again, the life focus leadership thing going on in the 10th house. So the lugna, the rising sign, again, Scorpio Vrishika, which is a fixed water sign. So this is like, kind of fixed emotions here we're talking about. So this is somebody who's like, again, if we're talking about leadership here, this is somebody who has like fixed feelings about something. They don't really change. And the thing is, the nakshatra for the lugna, the rising sign, is Jesta. Jesta is symbolized by a talisman, which can be something like, the badge or the shield carried around by police officers or military, that sort of thing, that kind of physical protection. It can also be spiritual protection, like the talisman like a shaman would carry. But in either case, there's some sort of protective energy. Also, Jesta can be related to like the elders of the community or like an elder sibling, that sort of thing. Um, so there's a protection, energy to the whole chart. Okay, because the rising sign is important because that gives you kind of the tone or flavor gestalt for the whole chart. So there's fixed emotions about some sort of protective issue. The Lagnatia is the ruling planet for the chart. So the ruling planet for Scorpio is Mars. So Mars is the ruling planet for the whole chart. Mars has gone to the 11th house, which relates to clubs, groups, society, also income. And Mars is in the nakshatra of Chitra. Chitra is symbolized by a gemstone, so a cut gemstone. So because of the facets of that gemstone, it's related to like structure and architecture. And Mars is a planet. It's a bhumi karaka, we call it. So it's a planet symbolizing land and property. Um, the other thing is Mars is a very fiery planet. It's a leadership planet as well, like Sun is. But Mars is more of like a commander, CEO type of energy, more than a president, where it's like somebody who rolls up their sleeves and kind of gets into the trenches, gets into the nitty gritty of the day to day operations of some enterprise. Okay. So, and Mars is an active planet. It's a rebellious planet. It's an innovative planet, but it's also a bit erratic. Okay. So Mars is in Chitra in the 11th house, but you can see it's like closing things out. So within about 10 days of this solar eclipse, or less than that even, Mars is going to be maybe a week. Mars is going to be slipping into the 12th house here. Okay. And the 12th house again is losses, expenditures, and also international trade. Mars is the lord of the 6th house of enemies, and Mars itself can represent enemies, can also represent siblings. Okay. So, yeah, and so I have on here those red arrows are the solid red arrows are where Mars is aspecting currently. But then the dotted arrows, that's where Mars is going to aspect its energy in about a week after this. Okay. So Mars can indicate a lot of times, if it's imbalanced, fighting, arguments, violence even potentially. Um, yeah, so again, it looks like we're looking with some sort of physical structure, though, in the 11th house related to groups. This could be even fighting over valuable things, property, or related to groups. Okay, because not only do we have Mars there in the 11th house, the Lugnatia, but we have Saturn aspecting it, a retrograde Saturn aspecting it from the 5th house. So Saturn is the other land or property um, planet. So Saturn and Mars together, when you get them together, Mars is the initiator and Saturn represents endurance, like longevity. So getting them together represents things like engineering or sports, especially endurance sports, can be military, that sort of thing. So because Saturn and Mars are in the, are related to the 11th house here, this could be uh, dividing physically groups of people. And the reason why I'm saying dividing is because it's happening in Virgo, which is a dual earth sign. So this could be physically separating people, group, society, that sort of thing. Um, and protection, doing that as a means of protection. Um, yeah, let's see. Once Mars moves into the 12th house here, it's going to be, well, it's aspecting the 6th house now, which is the house of enemies. And that means that the 6th house of enemies is going to be quite strong because Mars is aspecting its own house. The other thing is that this Mars aspect in the 6th house is aspected by Ketu, which is, again, the south node of the moon, an erratic energy. So this could be very strong enemies who are quite erratic. Okay. And then once Mars shifts into the 12th house, it's going to be aspecting the 3rd house where it's exalted. So this is going to be a very strong physical, structure, maybe even fighting with the 3rd house related things, which is related to siblings as well as neighbors. So this could be like a neighborhood skirmishes, violence, that sort of thing. The other thing is once Mars moves into the 12th house, it's going to be aspecting the 7th house of spouse and spouse-like partnerships. So that could be, again, arguments and contention there. Okay, so we're going from more of like a supportive position to more of a loss position once Mars shifts signs here. Okay, so the day lord for this moment in time is the sun, and the hora lord or hour lord is the sun as well. So again, we're picking up leadership again. Okay. Yeah, in many ways already. The dasha period for this time is Jupiter, Jupiter, Venus, Mercury. So the dasha period means planetary period, and that indicates the planets that are most active or influential you could think of at a certain time. So Jupiter and Jupiter, Jupiter is in the 12th house, or not the 12th, excuse me, the 8th house here, of chronic issues and deep problems, okay, endings, that sort of thing. So Jupiter represents law, it represents children, it represents education, it represents speech. And in this chart, Jupiter is the lord of the second house of family and inner circle. It's also the lord of the fifth house of children and advice. Okay, and Jupiter is also like the sort of spiritual advisor here. So it looks like there's, since we're running, Jupiter main period, there's a loss related to these things. Okay, long-term problems related to these things. And then we're picking up Venus again. So again, bringing some sort of attention or diplomatic, worldly advice to the situation or moment in time. And then we've got Mercury. Okay, so between these three, Jupiter is and Mercury are advice, also news, media, and Venus is creativity and art. So it looks like there's some sort of creative speech or communication that's happening here, especially since Venus is aspecting the third house of nonverbal communication, and Jupiter's aspecting the second house of verbal or oral communication. So a lot of discussion, a lot of writing, a lot of news going on here. So it looks like there's some sort of news related event related to high level authority. Yeah. Now the thing is that um, so the shop here is Jupiter, Jupiter, Venus, Mercury. But after Mercury comes K2. Okay, so within a short period of time, we're switching from Mercury to K2, and so again, we're switching the Mercury. Mercury is more influential on the Sun right now. So again, Sun, this leader, whoever's we're looking at here, is probably manifesting, showing themselves as more of a logical, analytical type, playing by the rules. Right. K2 though, um, K2 though again is the opposite. So we're switching from Mercury, the more analytical, logical type of energy with this leader, high level leader, to just being quite erratic. So going from logic to kind of a wild, type of manifestation. So this is a leader who could be changing their tune, as they're, or making some sort of, wild, claims or that sort of thing, because this K2 is also aspecting the second house of oral communication. Okay. So we've got that going on. So this moon nakshatra, since we're talking about a lunar eclipse here, again, the, Dasha period, day, and day lord, all this, is pointing to a lot of leadership stuff. But still, moon is involved, okay? Because moon is aspecting into this pravraja yoga of K2, sun, and Mercury. So what's the moon doing? Well, it's an eclipse moon. It's also a karaka bhava nasha moon, so meaning that the moon is in the fourth house. The moon represents mother, and the fourth house represents mother, so when we have moon in the fourth house, this can represent problems with mother, okay, and people related to the fourth house. It can also be, I think, motherland, okay. So yeah, and again, I've already mentioned that there's probably some mental health issues going on here because we have the two mind planets on the Rahu Ketu axis. And the fourth house represents other things such as happiness. Okay, so Digbal is directional strength. That means the moon is strong. Arkabhavanasha means there's issue with the moon and moon related things. And moon also, besides representing mother, the moon represents public. So this could be a really agitated public here. Okay. And the other thing is that the nakshatra the moon is in is Purva Bhadrapada. Okay, so Purva Bhadrapada is symbolized by a funeral pyre, so smoke and flames and destruction and fire, things turning to ash. And that's where the moon is. That's the intuitive, logical mind. That's the public. That's the mother. And this is being eclipsed in addition. Okay, so that's a lot of challenge to the moon. This very challenged moon is aspecting into this planet in the 10th house is pravraja yoga. Okay, so this transformational mind in the 4th house also is related to lineage, like family lineage and spiritual lineage as well. So yeah, there's some sort of destructive process going on here in the 4th house of home, happiness, mother, lineage. The other thing is the lord of this 4th house is Saturn. Saturn is retrograde. That line under Saturn in the 5th house means it's retrograde, so it's going backwards. Saturn's currently in a nakshatra called Uttara Bhadrapada. Uttara Bhadrapada is the back legs of a funeral pyre. So that's still cremation, destructive transformation energy, but it's a little bit more contained. There's like a stepping back and kind of surrendering to the process. So it's not quite as destructive as Purva Bhadrapada. And since Saturn is backing up here, pretty soon, within a few weeks, Saturn's going to be in this Purva Bhadrapada energy as well. So we're going to have these two natural malefic planets, Saturn and Rahu, in this very destructive energy. Okay, and Rahu is the north node of the moon. It symbolizes, again, hidden, unexpected things, mental health issues, can be like, uh, um, impulsive, compulsive behavior, that sort of thing. And again, these two natural malefics are going to be in a pretty transformative nakshatra. Okay. So the sun nakshatra, we talked about Purva Phalguni. So again, enjoyment, but again, there's some, because of the moon, eclipse moon aspecting all this in the 10th house, there's some sort of unusual change going on here. And also, again, we're flipping from Mercury energy to Ketu energy pretty quickly. In more of a social, larger social context, the 7th of September celebrates is the commencement of two different kind of observances in Indian culture. So one is Pitra Paksha, which is a month-long kind of observance and honoring of one's ancestors. And so we've already been picking up that energy as well because the 4th house here is related to the family line and also family spiritual lineage as well. So we're picking that up. And in addition, any eclipse that we have, lunar or solar, it always indicates to me some sort of generational change or karma because the planets involved, Rahu and Ketu, represent maternal grandparents and paternal grandparents, respectively. And then sun and moon. Sun represents father, moon represents mother. So you've got both sets of grandparents and parents here. So again, there's usually some sort of generational change that happens. In addition to Pitra Paksha, there's also Ganesha Visarjan, where they will often do different rituals to honor Ganesha, god representing a deity representing obstacles or the removal of obstacles and other things as well. But what they'll do is they'll take these statues and submerge them in water, like into the river or something like that. And so this is like, again, sort of a physical representation of, releasing obstacles and starting new. Okay. So between these two events here, Pitra Paksha, which is honoring the past, we're also clearing space for a new beginning to happen. And that's, even without this context that I've put here in words, that's essentially what's going on here. There's a kind of a big jolt forward in the 10th house of day-to-day activity because the day, what you do 9 to 5 is basically directing your future. And the 4th house is the past, like what's already happened and what's the tradition you come from. Okay. So we're honoring both sides, the 4th and the 10th house there. So that's a starting point. Okay. Let's see what we have on the next slide. I forgot. Okay. So yeah, I have it in bright yellow on the left side here. So Interestingly, potentially, is that the Scorpio rising chart that we're seeing here for this lunar eclipse. So, Scorpio rising, immediately I thought of the United States because the United States is also a Scorpio rising. So, there might be something on a national level related to this sort of energy that I've just been talking about. The other thing that's major, I think, that's going on around this time is that September 9th through 29th, the United Nations, which is headquartered in New York City, is gathering together for its General Assembly. Okay. So, that would figure in, I mean, that's a representation here of, again, high level authority, presidents, representatives, the sun in Leo in the 10th house here. And also Venus, in Ashlesha, again, diplomacy, bringing attention to diplomacy, because that's essentially what the United Nations is all about. So this energy could very well play out similar to the way I described it, specifically in the United States and specifically at United Nations General Assembly going on this month. It's happening basically in conjunction with the lunar and solar eclipse. So I kind of went down that rabbit hole essentially. So then I looked at the schedule for the United Nations General Assembly. And specifically on the dates of the 23rd to the 29th, so the last week or so of the General Assembly, is what they call the General Debate. And during the General Debate, they discuss, major issues because they have, I think there are 193 members of the Assembly. And so you're getting all these representatives from around the world to basically help decide global policies and things like that. So this chart here is a chart for the beginning of this general debate period. Okay. So just to get a general idea of how the next week of debating of these, global diplomats will play out. Okay. So this chart is set for 23rd September, 9 a.m., again, Eastern Daylight Time, which is in New York City. And here we have at the top here in the ascendant Lugna, we have the seventh constellation, which is Libra Tula. This is a movable air sign. Movable meaning a lot of action, and then air meaning ideas. So there's going to be a lot of ideas being, blown around, essentially. Okay. So that makes sense since we're talking about a week-long debate. And then the Lugna nakshatra is chitra, which I mentioned before, is the symbol of that is a cut gemstone. So we're talking about structure here and also value, valuable structure, that sort of thing. We have Mars there, so we have a fight going on here, and we have Jupiter aspecting Libra from where it's sitting now in Gemini. So Mars and Jupiter together, those basically it's like fighting law, fighting words. So basically speech and law, fighting speech. So debate, legal debates essentially is what they're talking about. Structuring legal debates. Okay. Then the Lugnatia for Libra rising is Venus. Venus rules Libra here. And by that time of the 23rd, Venus is going to be in Maga. Now, this might seem like I'm getting ahead a little bit, but there's a reason why, because uh, these things are basically going to be starting just after the solar eclipse is happening at the end of the month. But I didn't know if I'd be able to post this, it's going to be happening pretty quickly. So I didn't know if I'd be able to post this in time for people to see this ahead, just to kind of get some idea of what may be coming. So Venus is going to be in Maga at that time, nakshatra. That nakshatra is symbolized by a throne. So again, more leadership energy and diplomacy and leadership. And Venus is here in the 11th house of clubs, group, society, such as the United Nations gathering 193 diplomats together. And it's with K2. Okay, so there is, this could be, socializing with, high level foreign dignitaries and diplomats. That's what you could see here. Okay. And again, the 11th house is what we call a kamasthana, so it's a house of enjoyment. So this is a social part of what's going on, the hobnobbing, and I'm sure there's parties and all that fun stuff too. But there's something unusual about what's going on here. Or potentially KT can also represent like foreign things. So again, this could be like socializing, schmoozing. You can even call it with high level dignitaries and diplomats. Okay. The day lord is Mars, and Mars is actually Swa, not because of its sign, but because it's in the star Mars, because it's in Chitra. So that's going to bring strength to Mars. The Hara lord is Venus, and Venus at this time will be Swa because there's a parivartana, exchange of houses or exchange of stars between Ketu and Venus, because Venus is in the star Ketu and Ketu is in the star Venus. So these will both be strong. So this is going to be a very strong, high level, again, socializing of foreign diplomats, leading diplomats, I would say. So Mars is the fighting planet, and Venus is the supportive, socializing planet. So we've got those two again, hoggling energies going back and forth. Okay. The Shah period this time is Mars, Rahu, Sun, Jupiter. So Mars and Sun, the two leadership planets, Jupiter law, and Rahu is ambition, but also like something unusual going on here. And Rahu is in the fifth house. The fifth house, the natural fifth house, is ruled by Leo, which means like a high level stage. So there's ambition. There's some ambition here to, put these debates on display. And besides that, Jupiter is aspecting the fifth house, and Venus is aspecting the fifth house. These are the two counseling planets. Jupiter is the spiritual advisor, and Venus is the worldly advisor. So there's some, it's a very critical time. There's a lot to kind of cram in, frankly, of these 7 days when they're talking about world issues. Okay. So so we're gearing up here for ambitious stage leadership, fighting about law and policy, essentially. Okay. Then the moon nakshatra. At this time, moon is also in Chitra, so again, that gemstone energy, but it's a new moon. And it's in Virgo, which is a dual earth sign. So this is like some sort of sorting process going on here. Mercury's here, which owns Virgo, so there's some strength and protection in 12th house, but this is still 12th house. 12th house is related to losses, expenditures, but also international, trade and business, that sort of thing, which is essentially what we're talking about. Okay. So this is some sorting through some structure of public work, that sort of thing. The sun is also here in the 12th house. So we got this moon, sun, Mercury all happening in the 12th house here of losses, expenditures, and international trade. Okay. So, and the 12th house also relates to isolated places. So it looks like this is going to be pretty well protected, sequestering of these high-level officials going through the debate process, to make sure it's safe. Because this is going to, this is usually like, it can be very volatile, okay, in sorts of global public discussions. Okay. So the sun, though, is in Uttar Falguni, which is relates again to enjoyment, but with kind of like the Purva Falguni energy of enjoyment, enjoying the finer things of life. But Uttar Falguni includes the notion of some kind of purpose. So there might be networking and schmoozing going on here, but it's with a purpose to, again, uh, get to know these high-level foreign dignitaries better and to form alliances. Okay. The thing, though, about this mix here, the sun is the lord, in this chart, is the lord of the 11th house of club group society, and the lord of the 11th has gone to the 12th house. So there's going to be losses here related to this. So this might be actually this KT Venus, even though it seems like it could be, and most likely is, some sort of high level, again, networking of foreign dignitaries and that sort of thing, diplomats. This could also be, the end of social grace on the streets. So this could be like a public protest, which I imagine is going to be the case, often is the case when when the United Nations gets together, has their General Assembly. Okay. So we've got both of those things going on. So we've got, again, quite a bit of losses. The other thing is that this September 23rd date, when the general debate is happening in the UN, This is just a couple days after a solar eclipse, and the solar eclipse happened here in the 12th house. And the thing is that, again, that energy lingers. Okay, so we're starting off, this general debate basically with the solar eclipse that's happening, in a couple weeks after this lunar eclipse. Um, yeah, and then Mercury in here, I might as well mention that since Mercury is dominating the moon and the sun here where the solar eclipse is happening. Mercury is in a sign or a nakshatra of Hasta. Hasta is symbolized by hand. So this could be literally sorting through physically, um, you know, uh, like authority matters because Mercury rules the ninth house in this chart of government and authority. And also the fourth house, the 10th house is ruled by moon. So this is 9 to 5 work. And then sun rules the 11th house of clubs, groups, and sites. So the daily work here is behind closed doors, high level officials sorting through, losses related to clubs, groups, society. And I think this might be on two levels. It might be that they have to sequester themselves to protect themselves because it's looking like some protests are coming. The other thing is that, just to do this in a proper way. Okay. And again, it also looks like at this point, this is sort of like trying to recover from the losses that happened with high level officials of the lunar eclipse. Okay. So in the not too distant future, and then, we'll see what comes from this. Okay. Um, but again, it does look like there's quite a bit of loss here. Okay. And on top of that, besides Moon, Mercury, and Sun being in the 12th house of loss and expenditures, we have this Saturn, which again is getting closer and closer to this Purva Bhadrapada, front legs of the funeral, cremation energy pile in the 6th house of enemies, aspecting this. Okay. So there can be physical issues, acute issues, enemies, who are trying to block this sorting process. And the sorting process is probably not just of like groups, but actually the sorting out of themselves. Like this could literally be like a raising of hands to do voting on various issues that are of importance. Okay. So, let's see what do we have next. Well, what could maybe some of these important issues be? Um, well, the other thing to note, let me back up a little bit, is that actually what's interesting is that the current United Nations General Assembly and then general debate are happening basically during this lunar solar eclipse. But I actually, in my June 2025 transits video, analyzed the chart of the formation of the United Nations when they signed their charter, which happened in June 25, 1940, June 25th, 1945 in San Francisco. Okay. And what's interesting, I think, is that the sun rising sign for that chart was Gemini. So it's a mixed dual air sign. So again, mixed ideas. And on that day, a lunar eclipse happened. Okay, so what I'm starting to see here is that not only, okay, is the United Nations conducting its business during the time of a lunar and solar eclipse, but it in and of itself, it has this kind of lunar solar eclipse energy to it, which can bring ambition, but also, frankly, illusion, delusion, confusion, hidden, unexpected type energies, that's embedded within the sort of energetic framework of the United Nations. Okay, so if you want to see that chart again, you can check out my June 2025 transit video. And when I was doing that analysis, again, I was reading about the 193 voting participant nations, and it seemed there are two observer members. One's the Vatican, so, the Pope's domain, and then the other one is Palestine. So now you might see where I'm kind of heading with this and why I'm kind of kind of went down this road of like United Nations is happening, which again, New York is just around the corner from where I live. The United Nations, and then, you know, Palestine, if you're not following the news at all, is, a hot topic these days, especially because there are more nations who are planning on supporting Palestine becoming a voting member of the United Nations or independent state. Um, and they're planning on announcing it during this United Nations Assembly time. Okay, so I was like, okay, well, it's interesting. So already we have two levels of eclipse going on, okay, going into this potential process, debate, announcement, or whatever's going on. Okay. So the mystery is building. Let's just put it that way. So where did I go next? Well, I started looking at like why is Palestine, such a hot issue, and at least in a lot of the U.S. news. I mean, yeah, there's definitely, there's fighting going on, especially with the Gaza war that's been going on with Israel for almost 2 years now, and also because of the blockades and stuff going on, people are actually having a hard time actually getting food to live in Gaza, that sort of thing. So I was just curious in and of itself. I was just curious before I started getting into this whole lunar eclipse analysis. I was like, what's going on with Palestine? Like, it's in this war. It's got the famine. Famine basically going on. Hospitals are getting bombed, which is usually a big no-no in global, even global wars. It's usually considered like off limits. So I was like, what's really going on? Like, what's the astrology? Essentially, my question was, what's the astrology of Gaza? So this is where I landed, is that this chart here is the chart for the first Hania government. Okay. And this may not mean much to folks unless they're really strong into Palestinian history, but this chart is set for the 29th of March 2006, so almost 20 years ago. There's no birth time, but this event happened before sunset. Okay, the formation of this first Hania government. I couldn't find an exact birth time, but I know it happened before sunset. And this happened in Gaza City. And if you notice here, what I did was I oriented the chart to the sun, and it happened to be the moon as well, okay? Because sun and moon are both in Pisces, because this is a Pisces rising chart, the 12th constellation, that little 12 in the top diamond here. This is a Pisces rising chart. So basically, this is both the sun chart and moon chart for the formation of the first Hania government. Okay. This in and of itself is significant because when you have the sun and the moon chart lined up, and sometimes with the, constellation rising chart, that creates power and focus. Because the constellation rising chart can indicate like the movement of the body, the physical body. The moon chart can indicate the movement of the mind, and the sun chart can indicate the movement of the soul. Okay. So when you get the body, mind, and soul all lined up in the same house, that creates like a focus. Like there's no drag because all of you, all parts of you, all levels of you are, on the same page. Okay. So, so that already is telling me something, but why don't you take a minute here for those of you who are into charts, take a minute or two and look and see, what else do you see in this chart? Okay. So I'm just going to talk about it a little bit more, and then I'll get into more of the astrology just to give you more background here. So this first Hania government, okay, that happened in March 2006, this was a government of the Palestinian National Authority. And this is when Hamas first led the government, first kind of stepped in and took over. Okay, they won an election by I guess they got 44.4% of the votes, and this is in contrast to 41.4% of the Fatah, which is another political party in Palestine. Okay. And on this day, Ismail Haniyeh was sworn in as prime minister. Okay. And so, so that's kind of the events of this day and why it's important and why it kind of marks important development in Palestinian history. So, but what do we see about this chart? Okay, did you find it? We got a big solar eclipse going on at the top of the chart here. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is both the sun and the moon chart. That means this eclipse energy is right at the top of both the sun chart for this first Haniyeh government of Palestine, as well as the moon chart. So what does that also mean? This is also the exact time. So basically, Rahu you never see because it's a calculation, the north node of the moon. This is ambition, unusual energy. Okay. Then you have the sun. This is a solar eclipse. You can't see the sun. Okay, so sun represents the government, president. You can't see the government president. It's hidden. Okay. And then the moon, you can't see the moon either because it's behind this blocked sun. And the moon represents like the public. Okay, so, and this thing is we're in Pisces here, which is a dual water sign. So mixed emotions. Also, literally can be like two bodies of water or specifically on like a ocean or something like that. And that's where, Gaza is located basically on the Mediterranean coast, right? But based on this, if you can't see the sun and you can't see moon and there's Rahu there, this is going to be some sort of unusual government you can't really see, that's ambitious, but also divided. Okay. And yeah, so I was like, a sun you can't see, especially when you're forming government. I was like, so who's in charge? Especially with Rahu, there's gonna be illusion, delusion, confusion. Like basically, who's in charge? When I saw this chart, just like that's all I saw so far. I was like, I mean, I didn't even look at the rest of the chart. I was like, oh, I get it. Like I understand why there are a lot of problems going on in Gaza right now because it's like basically for the last 20 years, this was an important um, historical moment for the energy, astrological energy of Palestine, regardless of the politics, like whether you are on their side or not on their side, or what. I'm just talking about the astrology, okay, and what's going on. And I was like, wow, okay, well, that explains a lot. Okay, that explains a lot. I am going to get into a little bit more, but just that alone, again, if you're into, again, mundane astrology, which is a lot of what I do, world astrology, global astrology, also known as geopolitical astrology, I have a whole like video on that if you want to learn more about that. But this explains a lot about what's going on. And then this division of like, this Pisces divided, emotionally divided, and also probably physically divided government here. What also happened was about a year later, this first Haniyeh government collapsed because these two groups, Hamas was supposed to come in and take over, but there was so much fighting with Fatah that it never really happened. So then, what happened? It was so, I mean, I still can't I read it several times. I still can't get it straight in my head. It was so confusing to me, which again is this Rahu, solar eclipse energy. But basically, what happened was, I guess, some new Fatah leader kind of came up and dismissed the Hamas leaders or something like that. And what ended up happening was the Fatah political group took over the West Bank and Hamas took over Gaza. Okay, so basically, and the thing is, Hamas never acknowledged that, new setup the following year in 2007. So basically, Hamas is sticking to this energy because it never acknowledged, potentially Fatah taking over a year later. And then they're basically two different governments, leading two different parts of what's supposed to be a unified, entity. And that's what you're seeing in this chart. Okay, so what else do we see here? Okay, so here's the big reveal, right? Here's the solar eclipse. So that also like brings so again, if we're thinking about, we're backing up a little bit now. So we've got the lunar eclipse happening, again, if you want to think about it as the United States in Scorpio rising, we've got the solar eclipse happening on that level. And it just so happens New York City is their sun chart is a Taurus rising. So basically, if you flip the Scorpio chart over, you're still getting the solar lunar eclipse on the 4-10 axis. Okay. So basically, it's lining up for the United States. It's lighting up in New York City. And we have the eclipse energy embedded in the UN Charter. So there's eclipse energy for the UN. We have the eclipse energy of the first Kanye government, related to Palestine, and then the current, there's so many layers of eclipse going on. I was just like, this is wild. It was pretty overwhelming. So anyway, I hope you appreciate that so far. I'm going to get into a little bit more with this first Kanye government, um, just to see if we might be able to understand, or if there's any information that might indicate how things are going to go once these different countries start. Potentially, that's what they said they're going to do. They're going to start supporting Palestine becoming, independent, or becoming a voting member or something like that. Okay. So that's what I was interested in at this point. I was like, I don't know, can we even tell? Which we may not be able to, because there's again 3 different layers of eclipses going on here. So that might be so much blockage and veiling and mystery and sudden unexpected events that it's like anybody's guess, but I tried. So just some, I didn't want to get into crazy detail here with this first Honey government chart, but just to give some, point out some important features, I think. So again, this is a Pisces or Mina rising Lugna chart, dual water sign, so mixed emotions going on here. And the ruler of the ruler of Pisces is Jupiter. And look, Jupiter's down here in the 8th house of long-term problems, chronic issues, that sort of thing. So this hidden, unexpected, divided government is going to have long-term problems. So it's been 20 years like this, you know. And Jupiter is in a nakshatra called Vishaka. Vishaka basically means like victory at all costs. So it's like probably both groups, the Fatah and the Hamas group, both of them were just like, we just want to be in charge so much that we don't even care if we're united, as one country, which is holding them back, I believe, probably in whatever they're trying to achieve, which again, I know hardly anything about Palestinian history. It's just I keep seeing it in the news. So I was like, let me dig deeper astrologically to see what might be going on. So, and then, and then the 8th house is a mokshasthana. So it's all about liberation. So this is all about trying to liberate oneself, but, at a cost, right? And maybe even a cost to self, because this Jupiter represents the Lugna, again, which represents the self, physical self, and personality. And it also represents the 10th house here, which is reputation. So this dual, hidden, unexpected government, is causing problems for the reputation, of this entity. So the day lord is either Mars or Mercury, depending on the time of day, probably more Mercury. Mars is a fighting planet. Mercury is an idea planet, so that's not anything new. The dasha period is Saturn, maybe Mercury. Let me see. Is this Vishaka? Oh no, that's the moon. Sorry. Oh, the moon was in Uttar Bhadrapada most of the day, and then I think at about, there it is, 14:30 p.m. It switched from Uttar Bhadrapada to Revati. I'm guessing it's not Revati, because Revati is very much like a gentle, like hospitality type of energy, whereas Uttar Bhadrapada is trying to contain the chaos. So I'm guessing the moon was in whenever Hania took oath, was probably, I'm guessing, before 2:30 in the afternoon on this day. But Saturn is structure, Mercury again ideas. So, and you can see Saturn and Mercury are here in the 12th house of losses, expenditures. So the moon again probably in Uttar Bhadrapada when the oath took place. So again, trying to contain public chaos and transformation. Moon represents the public. The sun also knows Bhadrapada, so involving leadership and government. So the lugna here, Rahu, Sun, Moon, all invisible. Again, I was just thinking, like, who's in charge? You can't tell. Also, hidden, ambitious enemies, because the Sun is the lord of the sixth house of enemies here. They're hidden and ambitious. We've got the Rahu energy on top of an eclipse Sun. And then again, split near water, that's Pisces. So there's two areas, West Bank and Gaza on the Mediterranean coast. So also in this chart, again, just to pick up some important things right off the bat. So the third house here, you have Mars in the third house. That's a karako, bhava, nashaya, Mars. That means that there's going to be problem with enemies and siblings and neighbors. There you go. So, and Mars is in Mrigashirsha. Yeah. So this could, again, fighting with siblings and neighbors, and then this Mars is aspecting its own sign in the ninth house of government authority. And Mars, again, is a rebellious, active, physical, can be violent energy. And so that does bring strength to the ninth house of government. So there's strength and kind of might and transformation energy in the government. But again, this is a government that's divided that you can't see. Then the other thing is the seventh house here. We have Ketu in Hasta. So Ketu is the second node of the moon. That can be a very separatist type of energy. And Hasta, again, is that hand energy. So this could be like letting go of control. It's actually both, because it's in Virgo. So it's grabbing control on one side and letting go of control on the other side. So this is like, very much a very erratic sorting through process here. And Saturn is aspecting here. So you have two natural malefics on the seventh house of spouse-like partnership, business partnerships. That's a lot of malefic energy, if you're trying to build support moving forward. And not only is that, but the Lord of the seventh house has gone to the 12th house of losses, expenditures. So this is going to be a hard, basically showing a difficulty creating relationships that are going to support, this entity. Okay. Saturn is aspecting the seventh house. And so Saturn is in Kusha, which is like a supportive, nurturing type of energy, but you're going to get more of like the negative implications, even though it's a positive nakshatra, you're going to get more of the negative implications. So Saturn can be like ending and delays and obstacles. So this could be, delays and obstacles in terms of forming solid relationships that are going to be supportive. So especially with the Saturn and Ketu in the seventh house also relates to the path forward. This is going to be a lot of trouble, erratic trouble on both sides, literally like double trouble here, because we're in a dual sign of Virgo. Ketu, Saturn, destruction, unusual destruction, separating energy, losses, expenditures. Like, this is a very challenged chart. Okay. For anybody to deal with. So again, that's part of the, again, embedded energy of Palestine. Okay, so let's see what I did next. Yeah, I think I talked about most of this already. I gave it away early. So yeah, because the Hamas and Fatah, the two different political groups of Palestine, were unable to form a single government after this 29 March 2006 first Haniyeh government installation of Ismail Haniyeh. Hamas completely took over governance of Gaza in June of 2007 after the Fatah-Hamas conflict, okay? And basically did not accept the Palestinian Authority, claiming that they were in charge of everything on the 14th of June 2007, okay? So Hamas refused that. So even today, there's confusion apparently about who is the legitimate Palestinian Authority, and that's part of the problem. Okay, is that there's it's basically not only like a war, like right now the Gaza war, Gaza is fighting Israel, but there's basically a civil war within Palestine. Essentially is what I gathered from what I was reading here. Okay, so at that time, 2007, Fatah gained control of the West Bank, and then Hamas gained control of Gaza. And let's see, what does it say? PA, or Palestinian Authority. So wait, generally referred to as the PA or Palestinian Authority, while Hamas. Oh, okay. So the Fatah is referred to as the PA or Palestinian Authority, while Hamas is often called the Palestinian Authority government. Which, again, I'm new to all of this, so I have no idea. But if I was just reading the news on a day-to-day basis, I probably wouldn't have picked up that difference. So that kind of gave me some information about the history there, and that information's from Wikipedia. But that's astrologically part of what's going on for Gaza and why it's having so much trouble. And then where I go from there. So then I was like, okay, so we took on the left here, we have the first Kanye government. Okay. And again, the lunar eclipse related here to this 2006 chart. There was a lunar eclipse that happened on the 14th of March, and the solar eclipse was on this exact day. Okay. And then on the right here, what I have is I have this is the lunar eclipse that's happening now. So September 7th, 2025. 14:07 p.m. That's the exact time of the lunar eclipse. But what I did was I oriented, I shifted it. So instead of, I just turned the chart so that it's a Pisces rising. So we're comparing Pisces chart to Pisces chart, essentially apples to apples. Yeah. So what does this energy look like now? So what is, basically what I'm looking at is how are the two eclipses, like the lunar eclipse and solar eclipse coming up now in September? How is basically I'm turning them into transit charts for any Pisces rising, but I was specifically looking at this first Haniyeh government, essentially Palestine. Okay. So you can see right at the top part of the current flow. So we have this Saturn, massive Saturn retrograding right across the Lugna here, the rising sign. Okay, again, Saturn brings obstacles, delays, destruction, endings, chronic problems to the physicality and personality, the psychology of somebody. So that's happening for the whole entity of Palestine. Okay, that's right at the top. The second house here, we have Mars in the seventh house. So we have fighting going on in relationships, partnerships. That Mars is aspecting the first house here, as is K2. Okay. So Mars and K2 have very explosive energy, and this is happening in the second house of home, family, inner circle, but also speech. So a lot of aggressive speech going on. Also, second house is related to diet. So this could be where, again, the famine is coming up here. But there's also some physical support coming in through relationships. Okay. There's both going on there. But again, the support is relatively new because Mars has just gone into Virgo like in the last month or so. Okay, so there's probably some more support, but that may also be why countries are speaking up in support of Palestine, but also I think as much as they can supporting physical support to feed people, because of the famine going on there. So, what else is going on? This Saturn causing problems and destruction across the chart because it's in Lugna is aspecting the third house of neighbors and siblings. So, difficulties with neighbors, that's not surprising. And the sixth house here is where we have this Mercury, Sun, and Leo K2 mix. So again, this is strong, high-level enemies who, again, might flip the script. They might seem like they're playing by the rules here, but then they do some strange, unusual things here. Okay. So these are unpredictable high-level authorities here. So just because what I was gathering from this, just because you have some countries saying they're going to support Palestine, like on what level? Like, are they really going to speak up, or are they really going to give them power, or are they just going to blow a bunch of smoke? Like, I don't know what this means, but I think it's hard to tell because you don't know what's going to come from these high-level authorities. Okay. And the other thing is that what is it? Uh, the Mercury is the lord of the fourth house of home. Okay, so this is basically this issue is in the hands of kind of high level authorities in other places, like not really. It's not really in the hands of Palestinians, really. So let's see. let's see, the seventh house again, Mars is there, difficulty. This literally could be, and see Mars and Saturn here. This is going to be physical support, endurance here related to, creating some sort of physical, um, support going on here. The other thing, this Mercury that's in the sixth house, so this is going to bring acute problems to home, the fourth house, but it's going to bring acute problems to support, because it's Mercury is the lord of the seventh house as well. So even though there might be physical support, so that people get food or whatever, like, again, like how far are the enemies going to let this go? I mean, again, there's pretty strong high level enemies here, so hard to say. And then the 10th house here, a 10th house here is pretty tough. You've got Saturn aspecting it, Mars aspecting K2. You have 3 natural malefics aspecting the 10th house. I mean, that's 9 to 5 work. It's hard to get anything done. There's a lot of physical destruction, infrastructure destruction. So you can't, like roads blown up, building like the hospitals blown, everything, a lot of things getting blown up. So it's hard to, even if you had like a bunch of food or something, like how do you actually get it to people? That might be part of the problem as well. Okay. So you can see why, again, like there's a lot of problems going on here currently. Okay. This is, again, the 7th of September energy. And then I think I looked at the 21st for the solar eclipse. Let's see if that's true. Yes, I did. Okay. So again, on the left, we still have the, Palestine Gaza chart here. And then on the right, we have the 21st of September. Again, what I've done is I've taken, even though the actual eclipse is happening at 18:37 p.m. New York time, I've oriented the chart to be Pisces so we can use this as a transit chart for the first 28 government. Okay. So what do we have here? Well, we've got this pravraja yoga, again, 3 planets in a positive house, Mercury, Moon, and Sun, here in the 7th house. So this is looking probably better than the Mars because we have Mercury here. At least at a first glance, Mercury's here, its own sign, where it's both swa and exalted. So this should bring strength to partnerships. However, since Mercury's so close to the Sun, that means Mercury's combust, meaning you can't see Mercury. So this is not about a physical support at this time, okay? Even though it's a dual Earth sign, this could be against sorting. Okay? And I believe this time, yeah, Mercury's in Hasta nakshatra, and its moon as well. Moon is switching from Uttara Falguni to Hasta Nakshatra. So Mercury literally can symbolize a hand, and it's in Hasta, the Nakshatra, symbolized by the hand. So this could literally be a raising of hands because Moon is there, which represents public, and Sun is there representing, authority, government. So this could be a vote of partners, meaning, the general debate at the UN, from the, 23rd through 29th of September. Okay, so we're leading up to that. Okay, so that seems like potentially a good thing, but Mercury again, um, are these people going to show up in a physical way? That's what I would wonder. Because again, Mercury, you can't see Mercury. Mercury, when a planet is combust, it means it's so close to the Sun, you can't see it. So essentially what that means is not only is Sun going to be eclipsed, and Moon, is going to be eclipsed. All 3 of these planets, Mercury, Moon, and Sun, are eclipsed. So you're almost kind of recreating, this solar eclipse that's happening in the first 28 government chart. Except it's happening in the partnership, 7th house. Okay. And it's a split house. It's a dual Earth sign. The other thing is you still have this massive Saturn causing problems. And again, it's backtracking, retrograding closer and closer to Purva Bhadrapada, that cremation funeral pyre energy. So that's going to be negative energy on this potential. Again, the 7th house is showing potential, but I'm just not seeing physical manifestations of it. If anything, I'm seeing delays and blockages here. Okay. Even though there's some strength. Okay, so this might be that, like, since Mercury, you can't see Mercury, this might be like maybe behind the scenes, people support this, but they may not actually be doing anything in a physical way to truly support the progress of this entity of Palestine. Okay. Now, what else do we have going on that's, I think, important here? Well, the third house here of, again, neighbors, the lord of that is Venus, and Venus has gone down here to the sixth house of enemies. Okay, so we have, neighbor enemies who are opposing this because the sun is the lord of the sixth house. So the enemy's house is drawing in neighbors, and the partnerships voting thing that's going on here is drawing in enemies. Okay, so it looks like sabotage, frankly, by neighboring, states or countries, that sort of thing. The other thing that seems problematic here, okay, is, well, there's a couple more. So another big one is you have on either side of this Mercury and Virgo with Moon and Sun, which has potential, okay, to be helpful. On either side, you have Ketu and Mars. So you have negative natural malefic planets on either side. That's what we call a kartari yoga. That shows a lot of pushback, a lot of opposition to this happening. This looks like, again, vote happening. Now, again, we have 3 layers of eclipses going on here. So you never know. I mean, at this point, it's like, who really knows? But again, I'm just saying neighbors becoming enemies and enemies entering this process here of partnerships. And then we have this pop kartari, again, ring or necklace of natural malefic planets flanking this 7th house here. That's not a positive sign. Okay. And in addition, what else do we have? We have another thing. Oh, and then in addition, in the 9th house here, we have Scorpio, and the ruler of that is Mars. Okay, and Mars is going to the 8th house of chronic problems, death, that sort of thing. Okay, and the 8th house again is government and authority. So this is going to bring chronic problems, and changes, maybe even endings here. Okay. Now, I was saying there might be some, like theoretical support going on here. I'm not seeing the thing is, I'm not seeing any big positive change happening in the Lugna here. So I'm not seeing a big boost, for Palestine or Gaza. Okay. So we just have this like slow Saturn retrograding. This is going to be like steamrolling this, entity for a while because Saturn's going to be in Pisces until February 2028. Okay. So definitely not out of the woods. The other thing is that I'm not seeing, any positive energy going on with the 9th house here of government authority. If anything, again, the lord of that house has gone to a negative house, 8th house. Okay. The only thing, okay, so I was thinking, this is looking more on the negative side in terms of positive changes, okay, for Palestine. The only thing is that this Jupiter here that's in the 4th house, you can see it's at 27 degrees 2 minutes here. October 18th, it's going to move into Cancer, the 5th house here, where it will aspect the Lugna. And it owns the Lugna because it's Pisces. So that will bring some strength and positivity because Jupiter's a natural benefic. Okay. So, and that's Jupiter's going to be in Cancer for just a short time, 18th of October to December 4th of this year. Okay. And then it's going to retrograde back into Gemini until June of next year, June 2026. And Jupiter will be in Cancer for a year, June 2026 to 2027. Okay. When Jupiter moves into Cancer, it will aspect the Lugna, which again is where I was looking for positive change. It's also going to aspect the 9th house. So there may be some positive change coming. And again, I don't know if it's directly related to the UN voting debate situation, or if it's just in and of the astrology of Palestine itself or Gaza itself. It looks like there will be some positive change happening mid-October through the end, beginning of December. And then, again at June 2026 to June 2027. Now, the thing is, through all that time, Saturn's still going to be there. Okay. But, especially during this, the rest of this year, Saturn's going to go into Purva Bhadrapada. It's going to be, very transformative kind of mess. Okay. But then next year, when Jupiter is aspecting the Lugna in the ninth house in June, Saturn should be in Uttar Bhadrapada moving forward into Revati nakshatra. And Revati is about hospitality and endings and that sort of thing. So things there might be some temporary improvements in general. And again, I don't know if it's specifically as an independent state or identified as an independent, country or whatever. But it looks like there's some positive energy coming that will be helpful to Gaza mid-October to beginning of December, and then June 2026 to 2027. That's what I was saying. But I think during this, multiple eclipse energy stacked up here, it's hard to say. I can't say it's looking super positive in terms of, if that's what anybody or Palestine or whatever was hoping for or not or whatever. I can't say again, it's looking super, not bad. I mean, at least there's something here, going on. At least people are talking about it, going back and forth. But in terms of solid, positive upgrade or something, I'm not really seeing it. Okay, so where do we go from here? Okay, so that was again just taking a first glance at the lunar eclipse and how that might be affecting things related to the UN and talk about Gaza and stuff like that. So we'll see. Now what I was going to do is get into the lunar eclipse chart a little bit more, go through house by house for those of you who are kind of looking at it more for yourselves, more than on a more individual basis rather than like a global basis. And then after I go through house by house, I'll be looking at some of the subcharts that I think are relevant. So on the left here, basically the stuff I started with at the beginning of the talk. On the right here are notes for the other houses. So again, we have a Scorpio Vrishika rising, fixed water sign, so fixed motions. The Lugnatia ruling planet is Mars. It's in Chitra, that gemstone energy. So again, looking to structure groups. And we also have this retrograde Saturn aspecting Mars in the 11th house. So again, there's some protection energy going on here because the Lugna's in Jesta, that talisman energy. There's something about social structure and buildings, income, repeating, but also repeated issues going on here. It looks like there's some sort of trying to organize and manage things with different groups. But again, there's one problem after another because Mars is the lord of the sixth house of acute issues and it's gone 6 houses away. So we have a bhava Mars here. So, yeah. So again, there might be some sort of social issues going on here. So different yogas. This chart doesn't have actually that many yogas or planetary combinations, which bring meta effects. We do have that pravraja yoga of K2 Sun, Mercury in the 10th house. That brings a focus to 10th house issues, so 9 to 5 activities and reputation. Then we do have a kahala yoga, that support for the Lugnatia Mars because its landlord is Mercury, which is not super strong, but the landlord of Mercury is this Swa Sun. So Kahala yoga will bring leadership of leaders. So villages, like bringing villages and groups together. So, and again, we've got that protection energy at the top. So We do have solar yogas here and lunar yogas here. The solar yogas are mixed because we have a benefic in the 12th house from the sun, and we have a malefic and the second house from the sun. It's going to bring a mix of energy in terms of speech, which again, we've already got mixed energy because of Mercury and K2 on the sun. And then moon, we have this pretty strong Saturn, in second house from the moon. That's going to bring some challenge to the moon, which again is already challenged because it's karako, bhava, nasha, digmala. We have an exaggerated moon and it's eclipsed. So a lot of, looks like problems, emotions at home. And let's see, the chidra grahas, these are planets of vulnerability. They can show sensitive spots for somebody. So we've got Mars, Moon, Saturn, and Venus. So Mars and Saturn again, like construction, land, engineering. Moon and Venus are arts and motion. So we've got those two things like kind of at odds, I think, here. It's a very emotional time. We've got a fixed, water sign, so it's emotional, but then there's this sort of like, you know, um, getting logical, getting distant, and moving, looks like from, being diplomatic to maybe forcing issues, that sort of thing. Okay. The yogi in this chart, which represents wealth, is Rahu. So this can be some sort of unusual ambition at home or related to lineage because it's in the fourth house. Aviyogi and duplicate yogi. So aviyogi indicates lack of wealth and duplicate indicates wealth is Venus. So this Venus is kind of a mixed bag in terms of whether it's going to help or hurt finances. And Venus, again, is art, diplomacy, relationships. The second house lord is Jupiter. It's in Punarvasu, which is symbolized by a quiver of arrows. So again, there's some, fighting words. Arrow is a weapon and it's sharp, so there can be some fighting words going on here. Second house is also aspected by Mars, Saturn, and K2. So we have three natural malefics. So this could be a lot of arguing back and forth because it's a dual fire sign. Unusual division, physical division of family, land, property, speech. There could be some issues going on here, probably quite a bit, and maybe even double trouble because we've got a dual fire sign there at Sagittarius. The third house lord is Bhava retrograde Saturn, aspected by Venus and Ashlesha. And soon, once Mars transits to the 12th house here or Libra, we're going to have Mars here as well, where it's going to be exalted. So multiple physical communications, attention, this is like walking your talk, relationships, creativity losses, you're probably going to see here. And then, again, like shifting of energy related to the third house matters, so siblings and neighbors. So trying to be diplomatic to actually, potentially even coming to fisticuffs, fighting it out, duking it out. It looks like once things start to move after this moment in time. But in the current moment, there seems to be some attempt, at least, at diplomacy, and playing things nice. Then again, on the left, same stuff. Right side, and notes for the other houses. So a fourth house here. Fourth house lord is a retrograde Saturn, shifting to Purva Bhadrapada. So it's Saturn's getting more and more destructive over the next few months. It's going to be in Purva Bhadrapada October 4th. And then we've got the eclipse going on here, Moon and Rahu in Purva Bhadrapada. So there's some destruction here. A lot of destruction related to home, happiness, potentially mother as well, family line. And it's aspect by Jupiter, Sun, Mercury. So there's ambition here, trying to contain difficulties as long as we can, but it may not be possible. Again, home may be an issue, happiness, mind, emotions are at play, property, land, lineage, education. These things are all potentially going to see a very big shift during the lunar eclipse, and especially over the next few months once things again Saturn retrogrades and comes back. Then the fifth house here, the Lord is Jupiter, which is in the eighth house, a negative house. Saturn is there, aspected by Mars. So advice regarding long-term issues. This could be loss of construction or destruction of structures, engineering, children, probably romance too, because the fifth house is romance. So And the Saturn that's in the 5th house of romance is also aspecting the 7th house of spouse-like partnership. So Scorpios may not be feeling the love right now, let's put it that way. Then the 6th house here, 6th house lord is Mars. It's aspected by its own planet, uh, and then Ketu as well. So there's strength here, but again, erratic energy here. And Ketu's in Purva Falguni. So there's going to be an erratic daily schedule. This could be acute issues like infections and injuries, accidents going on here. Strong, aggressive, unusual enemy, maybe someone you don't see coming. Disruption of routine. So then seventh house lord is Venus. In constellation, you've got an aspect by Saturn, and soon the Mars will be there too. So you're going to have two natural malefics on the 7th house. So there's going to be challenge, delays to partners, loss of um, and restructuring probably of dynamics there, arguments, maybe building walls with each other, that sort of thing. Again, not just spouse, but like this could be business partnerships, that kind of thing. Then the 8th house lord is Mercury. Jupiter's there. This is going to bring trouble to family because Jupiter's the lord of the 2nd house of family and the lord of 5th house of children. So trouble with family, inner circle children, dual ideas. This could be like cycling optimism because Jupiter's the optimism planet. But again, it's going back and forth because it's in a dual sign of Mercury, but also it's in Punarvasu, that quiver of arrows where the arrows get shot out and brought back. So there's always this cycling energy with Punarvasu. So it might be hard to stay optimistic at the time or going back and forth with that. Ninth house lord is the moon, which again we know is challenged and eclipsed at this moment. Venus is there. So there's going to be an unusual shift in government authority, father, guru. That's going to bring attention. It's going to draw attention. And then the 10th house, again, this pravraja yoga, high level shift, a change in leadership approach. So this might be a leader who seems very logical, analytical, and suddenly gets wild, super creative. Somebody who seems like they play by the rules, and then all of a sudden they go off the rails. This could be a shift in position. This could be somebody quitting or getting fired. This could also be like a bait and switch type of thing where like you apply to a job, you think it's one thing, and then it's like a completely different type of thing. The 11th house here, 11th house lord is Mercury. Mars is there in Chitra, aspected by Saturn. So this could be sudden loss or disturbance of groups. Two sides fighting, public protests potentially. 12th house lord is Venus. This is getting attention to global issues of diplomacy, relationships, creativity, social grace, authority. So a lot of the stuff we were talking about. So in this chart, basically all the relationships are challenged. The 2nd house, family, inner circle. 4th house, home, mom. 5th house, children. 6th house, enemies. 7th house, spouse, business partners. 9th house, government authority. 11th house, clubs, group, society. So yeah, again, it's not going to be an easy breezy time, working with people during this time. And also, again, the other thing is that 4 of these planets, Mars, then Mercury, then Sun and Venus, so almost half the planets, 4 out of 9 planets are going to shift between the days of 13th of 16th of September, so about a week after this happens. And so that's, again, we're going to see that shift from that, Mercury sub-period to K2. So again, it's like and then that's going to bring us up to the solar eclipse that's happening in Virgo. So whatever fallout, like strange, unusual thing that flips with the authority figure, whatever contentions going on with clubs, group, society, like it's going to try to be contained after that. Although it's going to take a while because we've got these eclipses going on, and it's always like a place your bets, but no, don't hold your breath type situation energy with eclipses. All right, so next I'm looking at a few of the subzodiacs. Yeah, so I was interested because we kept talking about power and leadership. I wanted to look at the D10 and D11. which are important, and especially since I did bring up the uh, potential Palestine chart of the first tiny A government. Some of the results based on that are going, like, if I had an exact birth time, I would prefer that, but this might give a little bit of information, although it might be too far out because we're looking at the 7th of September, and the debate doesn't actually even start till the 23rd of September, so this might be too early, but just curiosity. So I have the D10, but also the D11, because especially with elections, which essentially is a voting process. The UN is a voting process, so the D11 would be super important to look at. Again, if we had an exact time for the first NEA government, that would be better, I think, more precise than this. This is a roundabout, indirect way of trying to find some information about the energy going on. Oh, excuse me. I think I just gave myself hiccups. Hold on, let me take a drink of water. Okay, this might hopefully hold it at bay. So on this slide, we have the D10 Dashamsha for career and reputation at the top. And then we have Ekadamsha D11 for public support. So again, I thought was important more for like election type stuff, which is related to the UN. But if you're not familiar with subzodiacs, amshas, subcharts, divisional charts, all different names for the same thing, these are mostly analyzed to determine timing of things. So at the top here, I have the dasha period. So again, for the lunar eclipse chart, we're in the period of Jupiter, Jupiter, Venus, Mercury. And then on 16th September, it changes to Jupiter, Jupiter, Sun. So I've circled all these planets in these charts. So basically what we're looking at are these planets placed, positioned positively or negatively? Because that gives us an indication of, are things moving in a positive direction when we shift planets, or moving in a negative direction? You can also get some more details to support or integrate into the main chart, but usually you don't look at these on their own. Okay. So the D10 here, well, Mercury's not well placed. So, this particular moment of the lunar eclipse is going to be challenging for D10, career reputation. But also in this chart, we have Jupiter and Saturn parivarsha, exchange of houses, so we can flip those two, which is going to bring strength, but that also means that they're very tightly integrated, their energies. And Jupiter's like law, and Saturn's like tradition, history. Also, Jupiter, spirituality, Saturn is a religion. So there might be a really tight, this might be even like religious law, could be. And, again, sort of interesting, I brought up Palestine, not to get into any of the religious politics either. I mean, again, I'm just the astrologer here. So, trying to understand why they keep coming up in the news and what's going on there, so an astrological point of view. But with Jupiter and Saturn, because Jupiter is the main planetary period here, that's going to bring strength to this chart. So there's strength here. Traditional structure. But again, the strength is with traditional structure and ideology and law and groups. So again, this could be religious, you know. Then we have a swa Venus in the ninth house. So we have Venus in the ninth house in the main chart. So again, we keep getting this and here we have it with Rahu. So ambitious, unusual, creative diplomacy coming from government. Mercury again is loss, and it's with a exalted Mars. So this might be trying to actually step away from more of the aggressive tactics. And then we have Sun here in the second house. So this could be like major opportunity to speak on behalf of whatever entity. Okay, could be. But this is pretty positive. I mean, since we're running Jupiter as the main period and then the sub period, and Jupiter's in Parivartana, and Jupiter, when you bring Jupiter back to the 11th house, um, yeah, it's going to be like strong support of the 11th house. But the only thing is that it's intertwined with Saturn, which is going to bring difficulties because that's just the nature of Saturn. Okay, even though Saturn is strong, and you're going to get, a lot of positive things from Saturn. The other thing is Jupiter and Saturn both have 3 aspects. You're going to have Jupiter and Saturn in almost every house. So again, maybe it wasn't by coincidence, again, I just am following my intuition, and sort of knows on these things, not trying to rile anybody up, but, this looks like could be very, spiritual law or religious law could be involved here. Then the Ekadamsha D11 for public support. And again, this is an important subchart for elections and voting. Mercury's not well placed again. So again, this sub period of planets is not helpful here. But then Sun is in, a positive house, but it's with a debilitated planet and it's got Saturn on it. So the D11 is not super strong for those planets like Venus, Sun, Mercury, but Jupiter is exalted in the 11th house. So again, public support, and since we're running a Jupiter period, this might, again, help quite a bit. In terms of like if somebody's up for an award or if somebody's getting voted into whatever position, it might be helpful there. Mercury's in the third house, which can indicate changes and endings. Again, the other thing is that this Mercury, is in a negative house in both of these charts. This might also be like finding that the more sort of logical, rational approach is not helpful. Because for some people, it's not, so maybe, switching from Mercury to KT, like doing things in an unconventional way, maybe that's the key. If you've been trying to play things by the book and it's like, yeah, it's not getting me anywhere, that may be why. Jupiter's exalting 11th house with the debilitated Mars, but Mars will be Bunga, will be pulled up by this exalted Jupiter. But, this could be speech or law related to a rowdy crowd. Frankly, and Jupiter's aspecting its own sign of the 12th or 7th house here. So that's also going to, support partnerships, but Saturn's there. So again, Jupiter and Saturn are quite intertwined here. So this could be conservative partnerships. The other thing is Jupiter is debilitated in the 5th house. So this may not be, even though there might be legal support, maybe that's not the best advice coming through here. And Venus is debilitated. So Jupiter aspecting the 5th house of counseling, where it's debilitated, and Venus being debilitated in the Lugna. This is not, even though, how would I say, even though somebody might be voted into a particular position, it may not be well advised. So, yeah. Yeah. Then, let's see. Venus debilitated in the Lugna with Saturn there, with Sun and Moon. This could be like emotional, because the two emotion planets, Venus and Moon, are there emotional, but like not the most diplomatic or creative, or practical advisor here. This might be like an exciting, because Jupiter and Mars together can bring like enthusiasm. So this can be like public enthusiasm, but like, is this the best, truly the best? Like, this might be the popular vote, but is it really the one that's truly going to serve, again, the greater good? I mean, that might be another question. And this is an important chart because you have 3 planets in the Lugna and another one aspecting it. So the energy of 4 planets is in the Lugna. That means that this chart of D11 is important. So we've got those 2 going on. Then we've got relationships, because I mentioned like a relationship seemed to be like a serious issue here. So we have the D9, the Vamsha at the top, and the Drake and a D3 at the bottom. So spouse partnerships at the top, siblings at the bottom. So already we have problems with the spouse, which were not surprising given that we had Mars, Saturn aspecting 7th house, and Mars soon aspecting the 7th house. We have Venus right at the top here. Venus at the top in the Lugna and the D9 indicates problems with spouse. Sometimes the relationship, sometimes the spouse just has different issues, like maybe financial or medical or whatever. Mercury's not well placed again. and Mercury's not what you can see Mercury's not well placed in the next one either. So you can see this Mercury subperiod is a very not is a challenging transformative time. Okay. And Mercury has two natural malefics with it, and its expositor is debilitated. So Mercury's toast, basically, in this D9. So this might be really some harsh decisions and not great leadership going on. The other thing is that the sun is debilitated, and we're moving into the sun subperiod in September 16th. So even though sun is in a positive house, it's debilitated. So that's going to bring that down. Bring that sun period down. It might be okay, but it's not going to be stellar or astounding. And Venus is in the Lugna, so and it's aspected by Jupiter, which seems good because they're both natural benefics. But Jupiter is the sole enemy of Venus, so there's going to be contention, fighting here. And the Sun is debilitated in the 10th house. So weak, I would say weak leadership moving forward, but more strength in the past and the home. So it might be that this new leadership that's coming on board in September, that period is actually not beneficial for the spouse. Okay. But in direct contrast, if you look at the D3, Sun is exalted in the 10th house with a Swa Ketu that has Digbal as well. This is a massive, Sun Ketu combination. So a very unusual leader here, which is going to be a big boon for siblings. Okay. So yeah, Mercury and Jupiter are not well placed in this chart, but there's a parivartana with Jupiter and Saturn. So again, Jupiter and Saturn very, tightly wound up together, bringing strength and protection. Mercury's not well placed, but it's a pure temporal malefic in this chart, meaning it owns two negative houses, the third and the 12th. So actually, it's kind of good that Mercury's in another negative house to keep the negative energies in the negative houses instead of bringing it into the middle of things. But this is gonna be a super strong ninth house because you're gonna have Venus, they're exalted, Jupiter, Swa, they're with Saturn. So, but they're soul enemies, so there's still contentious relationships going on here. But the Sun exalted with with Ketu, I mean, this is super strong. Unusual leadership here. That's going to be a big boost to siblings. The other thing is that D3 is related enemies because this is another analysis of the third house. So siblings, this could be rivals. Okay. And so since this is so strong with this exalted Sun with K2, unusual leadership, Parivartana, Jupiter, Saturn, I mean, this is a massive chart. I mean, sibling D3. And the thing is, it's so strong and considerably stronger than the natal chart. What I'm seeing here is that if there's some problem going on with siblings, neighbors, friends, that third house, um, they're a force to be reckoned with, essentially. And so when I was looking at the transit charts for the lunar eclipse and solar eclipse, and like Venus, the lord of the third house, has gone to the sixth. I think this is during the solar eclipse. Again, that means that, again, that energy of siblings, neighbors, that type of group are very strong potential enemies here, and that alone may block. So the thing is, it's not looking super strong, like I mentioned for the Palestine chart. But again, you haven't looked at like the oppositions chart. If you look at the oppositions chart, maybe it's sort of like a lukewarm, mediocre situation for the Palestine chart. But if the opposition chart are super strong, that may be what really determines the outcome, essentially. And so this is the thing: is this sibling chart here is so strong. This may be where again, if there's any real answer, this may be it. It may be that the opposition's so strong is that's what blocks anything from going forward for Palestine. So, but clearly there's some massive boost in, power and position here. I mean, this is like off the charts strong here. Um, yeah. The other thing is when Jupiter goes to the ninth house, it aspects and it's exalted in the lugna, so more strength when Jupiter's active, and it is because we're in the main planetary period of Jupiter. So that this is D3 is like just really strong. And then when we go into Jupiter's sun, it's like, fireworks. The other thing is that Mars, we're not running Mars or really talking about Mars, but just in case, you wanted to know, there's more strength here because Mars is aspecting its own sign in the fifth house of intellect and advice. So that's also going to bring like a rebellious, transformative advisor. I mean, this is like a powerhouse, if this is like a really like a brother or sister, it's like, whoa, yeah, don't mess with them. And then this is, I think, the last slide. So just more relationships. The Shaptam should D7 for children at the top, and the Dwadasham should D12 for parents and grandparents at the bottom. So the D7, this chart's kind of different. Sun is not well placed. It's in the third house. There might be some change or endings, and it's Lord of the 11th house. So there might be change and endings of groups. Jupiter is with Mercury and Mars through Parivarshan in the second house. So this could be a lot of like debating and losses through angry words, protesting, that sort of thing. So it looks like children or that level again, the younger generation are kind of rising up. Venus is in the ninth house again, so and with the moon, so there's a lot of emotional, creative, authority energy going on here. But we have an exalted retrograde Saturn at the top, so there's strength here as well. It just seems like it's more indirect, and when the sun period comes around, it's not going to be so beneficial to, again, the younger crowd. Then in direct contrast, so again, we get these huge contrasts. Dwadashamsha D12 for parents and grandparents. So Mercury's not well placed again. So Mercury's like, again, going to be a challenge basically across the board because it's going to be in negative houses in almost all these subcharts. But then you have Jupiter Swa with an exalted Venus, even though they're soul enemies in the ninth house. That's a super strong ninth house, okay? So diplomacy, wise and worldly advice, leadership coming here. Then we have the sun exalted in the 10th house, like we did in the siblings D3 chart, which is like crazy, okay? So you can see it's like the spouse chart, sun was debilitated, and then siblings and parents, grandparents, it's like exalted, and then children sort of, not great, but sort of in the middle. So you can see there's like these huge contrasts of, there's like winners and losers here, like very strong, sharp lines in terms of benefit or detraction. And so the thing is like that may be part of the problem with the relationships is that whatever changes are happening, maybe for one close person, it's like the greatest thing ever, and the next person, it's like demolishes them. So, yeah. Um, yeah, so Sun exalted in the 10th house, very strong leadership. But the thing is, like, Sun is exalted in the 10th house, but that means it's debilitated in the fourth. So this is like that analogy of a boat where people are, if you're driving a boat and you're only looking forward, you're not paying attention to the waves behind you that your boat is creating, which can cause problems for like wildlife, people, other boats or whatever. Like apparently I'm not a boat driver, chauffeur, I don't know, captain, but but the thing is, what I've heard is that when you're a captain, you want to think about all sides of the boat, and because you never know where the wind or water might direct you. So you want to cause problems for others in any direction, 360 view as opposed to just like straight ahead. And so when I see something like sun exalted in the 10th house, I'm like, wow, that sounds really great. But that also means like it's not going to be so great for the fourth house. And again, the fourth house is home. The fourth house is happiness. The fourth house is, lineage. So, but you can also see like how exaggerated these subcharts are. It was like kind of like, whoa. And again, I'm also seeing like a divisive leadership here. Again, when the sun period comes around, are you going to go up a few levels or drop a few levels, probably both, who knows. And then moving into Virgo, 11th house. Oh, and that's the other thing, right? So, again, pretty soon, within about a week or so after the lunar eclipse, the sun is going to switch into Virgo. So it is going to be literally in this dual, the sun leadership energy is going to be in this dual sign. So that's another indication that there's going to be dividing of groups. Mars is debilitated in the top, which is almost the opposite of Saturn exalted in the top for the children chart. So what I was saying with this D12 is that there's this erratic kind of energy at the top and really strong, leadership. It's almost like the whole MO of the younger generation versus the older generation. It's almost like the older generation are like, I'm going to choose a leader, like their thought was, I'm going to choose a leader, that's just going to like run everything for me. And I don't have to do anything except maybe choose them like, whatever, every 4 years. Whereas the children, it's like their MO is like, I'm involved on a daily basis. It's not just about going to the one big election every few years. It's about being an active participant in the process. And again, with the Saturn exalted at the top, I mean, this is like a strong core sense of self. So having less kind of buy-in to the names and the games of the leaders in politics or whatever that might be, there's a generational difference, it seems like, in terms of how much they revere leaderships, that sort of thing. Because it's so like different here. Yeah. So, yeah, I would say that the older generation feel less self-empowered than the next generations. And maybe they're sort of banking or leaning or expecting too much of the leader to do too many things. Like, I mean, we're all leaders every day, and small, even if they're small and not, on TV or on the internet or whatever. It's like we're all contributing to the overall fabric of society. So, it's not like, oh, I voted for them and let's just blame them for the next parade. It's not like they're the only, influence in the whole scene. So, yeah, just a different approach, I think. So there you go. So anyway, thanks so much for stopping by, listening to one of my talks. I appreciate all your support for my work in the channel. Again, all my teaching videos on the subject of Vedic astrology and my concepts playlist can be found there. For more famous birth charts, check out my birth charts archive list 2025 video if you like to learn astrology. That way, famous people, places, and moments in time. I do offer individual birth chart readings, but if you're interested in that or an application or more info on my astrology classes, you can email heartlightastro@yahoo.com for more info. And then I do have another YouTube channel on natural medicine where I discuss Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, and yoga, so other Vedic arts, as well as other paradigms of medicine, homeopathy, naturopathic medicine. And the name of that channel is Nature Source Care. So that's out there for you. All right. So as always, thanks so much for stopping by. And as always, I hope you found this talk helpful, useful, and interesting to you as you learn to navigate the energy cycles of your own life. All right. So take good care. Namaste.